Dave, thank you for your insights. The course that I'm teaching now is the one that I want to talk to you about. It is called Science Methods and Practice, and students are coming up with novel research questions about paleontology. We use an online database of fossils from throughout time and throughout the world, and students are extracting data from the database with a lot of support to set up statistical tests, and then they write their results, and they need to interpret the results they have with the primary literature to write the discussion of a scientific paper. And that's really, really hard for them. And it's that skill that Dave was talking about of integrating literature and integrating literature with the results they obtained and their results in the literature. It's very hard for them to connect. So I've been trying different things through time. And interestingly, I gave them an assignment a couple of weeks that I call interpreting results, where I give them data about how vitamin C affects the duration, severity, and frequency of colds. And the studies show no significant differences between controlled groups and treatment groups. In other words, vitamin C doesn't have an effect on duration, severity, or frequency of colds. I know it's kind of mind-blowing. And only 2 or 3 of my 24 students got that message because they just they didn't want to interpret the results. They knew already. So why should they do the careful read? So that's telling me a lot about what kinds of prompts I need to give them to encourage that deep reading. I am going to pull up that vitamin C assignment for you in just a second here. So just give me a moment while I look for it. Okay, so here it is in the chat, so you can have your own copy of it. There's also there's also a publication associated with that paper. Yes, it is a myth that vitamin C can be used to treat colds. And one of the things that I've told my students is I grew up with that myth. So drinking orange juice when I have a cold still feels really good, right? There's an emotional connection there for me that I find beneficial, even if there isn't anything that's actually treating the cold. It's treating my mind, which is helpful. Yeah, it is fascinating. I also have spent a fortune on vitamin C. And Dave, I saw your comment on learning styles. I, at some point, would love to get into the literature about learning styles because I feel like we're kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. Because again, getting into the psychology of it, students think they have different learning styles, and students are more comfortable in different learning styles, and that comfort and those predispositions are part of teaching. So I would love to see if there's research about that. The whole point of sharing ideas here, though, is to talk to you about what I've been doing with alternate grading. And I'm going to give you a URL with my liquid syllabus. I started making a liquid syllabus when Sarita taught me about them, and I just was a much friendlier way for students to learn about the course. I really like making the video for the homepage. I don't necessarily like starring in the video, but I think that having a video introduction to the students welcoming into the course really goes a long way. And it helps them see that each iteration of the course is really tailored to the student body, because they don't necessarily see that connection to them unless it's pointed out. Given that this course is called Science Methods and Practice, the best way to learn science is by doing science. And there are also just some reflective type prompts that are related to how science works, but not necessarily the primary goal of the course of writing a peer-reviewed scientific paper. And in this case, the peers are the other students in the class. So one of the things that I've done in alternative grading is taken Linda Nilsson's suggestion to have different tiers in the course. So there are some assignments that are more science and society. These include things like there's a database called Scientist Spotlight, where students can look up biographies of different scientists. This is especially powerful because the contributors to the Scientist Spotlight database really emphasize a variety of demographics in the people who are included, so people can look up keywords that match their own demographics and find scientists like them. That's incredibly, incredibly powerful. And yet some students don't want to do that assignment, right? So it's optional, right? It's not an assignment directly related to writing the paper. I'm just going to catch up in chat. It looks like Chris is talking about learning styles, so I'm gonna skim over that for now and go back to the alternate grading. Then there are other assignments that students don't need to do. Again, they don't need to do to write their scientific paper, but it's helpful if they want to go deeper into the research process. This is reading more primary literature, it's learning more statistical techniques. Everybody in the class learns one particular statistical technique called a Mann-Whitney U-test. Some people have set up a question that requires them to use a different statistical analysis, so they can study those techniques for additional credit in the course. Or if somebody wants to learn all 4 of the techniques that I teach, they're welcome to do that. So to get 100% in the course, students need to do the required assignments, option A and option B. 100% is above and beyond what they need to get an A for an A. So at the UW system, the University of Washington UW system, we assign grades on a 4.0 scale instead of as a percentage. So for me, a 95% in my class is a 4.0. The students, I don't say that explicitly, so the students don't usually bother calculating that. But that's another issue. So yeah. So another aspect of alternative grading that I've done is I really want students to learn from each assignment. So instead of doing a half-assed job learning, I want them to demonstrate to me that they understand what I want them to from doing the assignment. So I could imagine a number of the write-ups that people made about vitamin C as being C quality work. C quality work doesn't count for me, right? I don't want people scraping by in the class. I want them learning. So I grade on complete and incomplete reasoning. And students always have the opportunity to resubmit their assignments. So I really want to be playing into the assessment feedback loop. When students submit an assignment, they also need to write a reflection about the resubmission. So it's a standard reflection each time where they tell me what they did to improve their understanding, what resources they used to improve, and the important mistakes that were in the original. And I found this reflection really, really helpful. And it's the first quarter I'm using it. But what it's doing is it's treating the resubmission process as a time for reflection rather than points grabbing. Before, students would go in, add a couple more sentences, say, okay, I'm done. And I'd say, no, you're not done. And they'd go in and add a couple more sentences and then say, okay, I'm done. Having them pause and do this reflection is encouraging them to really think about why they have another chance to complete the assignment. Um, Nabucco, thank you for your question. I hate grading too. My trick for grading in this class is actually something that Sarita said, that I do my grading in order to prepare for class. So the grading and the prep time are inseparable for me. And uh the resubmissions are actually pretty easy to grade. The slow part of grading for me in an incomplete complete world is observing the patterns that I need to work into my class. Otherwise, did they do it? Nope. Yes, nope. It's done. I do have, for the statistics assignments, I have some closed answer multiple choice questions that are graded automatically. The open-ended questions are pretty quick to grade, especially after having used them for years. Yeah, so I guess that's what I would say there. It is time consuming to do the regrades. I give all of my readings and videos I assign through Perusall. Has anybody here used Perusall? So it's an annotated a shared annotation site. So students can watch videos and comment at different times on the videos, or they can comment on a text at different places in the text. I group them into groups of 8 because that seems to be about the right size to generate enough comments, but not be overwhelming in the number of comments. And so I quickly read through all of the conversations. Each conversation maybe takes an hour to read, and then I look at the student view very quickly. Perusal has an automatic grader, so I rely partly on that and partly from what I remember in the thread. And then I can go into the students' comments in more depth if I need to, if I'm thinking of giving them an incomplete. But it's usually, did you participate in the conversation or not? And half-assed participation in a discussion is pretty obvious. Yeah, Perusal is what I'm using. Yeah, that's exactly it. Nabucco. Okay, so 10% of my required assignments are the in-class participation. It is always an option for my students to complete the participation outside of class. I have a Google Doc that organizes the notes for a particular day. And we fill out these notes. We fill out these notes as we continue in class. So here are the announcements, learning objectives, and then we're going through the structure of a claim. And in class, students are going to be analyzing claims that we've seen before in the class and identifying the parts of the, they haven't thought about these parts of the reading as claims before. So this is revisiting content to identify the parts of a claim. And then I'm going to have small group meetings with, oh, here's a section about warrants. How do you connect the evidence to the claim? And then I'm going to be meeting with some of the students at the end of class to help them find primary literature. So students can complete these activities in another Google Doc that they share with me, as long as those activities are included, whether they were present in class or not, they have credit for participation. There are required short assignments. This is the bulk of the course. These are the small assignments that are scaffolding the work of writing a whole research paper. So they're anything from find 3 articles from the primary literature and describe them briefly about how they relate to your hypothesis, articulating what your hypothesis is, to here's a draft of your whole paper, right? There's a whole spectrum of what makes up these assignments. But by the time students are submitting a final paper and a cover letter that documents the revisions that they've made to simulate the process of of a peer-reviewed journal article. I've seen drafts of everything. So this is 35% of the grade, and everything has gotten feedback at least once. So that's my approach to alternative grading. Any questions?